Mandy, I'm an alcoholic. Okay. This is quite possibly my worst fear. Um, okay, I'm going to start at the beginning. Okay, so I was born in Durban. My parents were very loving. I have an older sister who's a year older than me. I had a really good childhood. I had a lot of opportunities. I had a lot of privileges that other people didn't have. I think like my childhood, I can't remember much from early childhood, but maybe like primary school, like starting school. I remember my first day of school. I was really excited because my sister was in school the year before and she was wearing a uniform, and I was like, I want to be like that, and I want to go to school. And so my first day of school, I was really excited. I woke up really early. I got dressed and I went to school, and I remember I was very awkward. I was very uncomfortable. Didn't know how to talk to people, how to socialize. I barely spoke. I was very quiet, very reserved and withdrawn. But yeah, that first day of school, I saw my sister during the break, and I was so excited to see her, and I ran up to her, and she was with her friends. I didn't have any friends, and so well, she was also like a little kid, so she made fun of me, and her and her friends were laughing at me. I can't remember about what, but I was so upset after that. And then I remember like sitting alone after that, and I didn't really know how to make friends, didn't really have friends. So that was kind of like my early childhood was just kind of me not being able to fit in anywhere. And I remember I started reading a lot. So my teacher was really nice. She let me sit in class during the break and read, and I really enjoyed that because it was kind of like an escape. I didn't have to talk to people, didn't have to like try to like socialize or anything. And so I read a lot. I wrote a lot, and I also lived in my head a lot. I would daydream all the time, so I'd like just make up all these stories in my head. Then I'd go back to them, and I'd be daydreaming more, and I'd build on these stories. And I was living in this island, and so there was like a whole lot of things that were going on in my head. So I wasn't actually living in the world. Like everything was in my head. It was all just like escapes for me. When I was 12, my mother had my brother. So there was like a huge age gap between me and my youngest brothers. And then she got pregnant again with my youngest brother. And so when she was pregnant, she found out that she had breast cancer. So he was born kind of early, at like 7.5 months, so she could start treatment and stuff. And my brothers were like a year and a half apart, same like me and my sister. They also wanted to kill each other, the same like me and my sister. So my mother was in remission for about a few months after that, and then the cancer came back. And at that point, I mean, I didn't know a lot of things because nobody really talked to me about anything. But I overheard conversations, and I remember she stopped treatment, and I was really angry at that point because I was like, well, so now, she like not interested in living or anything. And it was like a lot about me, I didn't really think about her, what she was going through, or the fact that the treatment was not extending her quality of life in any way. So I remember my brothers were kind of like, they were obviously babies at that point. And the one day, so my mom was getting like quite sick. And the one day, my youngest brother, he must have been about a year and a half, and he was sitting on the kitchen floor and crying and screaming. And my mother walked into the kitchen, and she said, she looked at me and she said, what is going to happen? She screamed at me and she's like, you can't even see that he's crying. What's going to happen when I'm not here? And I remember like two things hit me at that point. And the first thing was, okay, my mother's dying. And the second thing was, you know what, I've got to actually take care of my brothers. Like, it's not okay. Like, so yeah, it was, I don't think that was meant to be anything bad. And she was really sick. And I've never really said it to anyone because I thought, it sounds bad, but I don't think it was meant in that way. She was medicated and she was sick and she had a lot of fears of her own. And so then after that, it was kind of like, yeah, me kind of just taking care of my brothers. I was like doing the things, like, like we do nappies and bottles and baths and all of that, but like just kind of doing it. And yeah, so my mother got really sick, and then we obviously knew, like, okay, so the time was coming. And I remember probably this was my first experience with praying and God because I've never prayed before. We were not religious. My dad was certainly not religious at all. My mom was Catholic, but she didn't she didn't go to church or anything. She never had any, we didn't grow up with any beliefs or anything. So yeah, I remember like I was praying at that point, like it was more just about just so that she doesn't suffer. And yeah, the night that she passed away, I remember my aunt called me in the room and she's like, no, you need to come sit here. And so at that point, I was in complete hysterics because my dad was calm, my sister was calm, and I was hysterically screaming at my dad to give her more morphine, and I was like in this complete panic. And I remember I got out of the room, and this was my first experience with getting on my knees and praying. And I went into my room and I got on my knees and I prayed. It was just that she would die quickly. And I got up, I went back to the room. But like, yeah, for whatever reason, after that, I was calm. So I sat there, I held a hand, and I was calm. But I was calm because I just took myself out of that. And I realized at that point, I had this amazing ability to remove myself completely from any painful situation. So I was sitting there, but I wasn't there. So yeah, after that, I took my first drink when I was 15. I think I was 15. Yeah, it was a few months after that. And it was with my cousin, who was 13. She was already drinking, and she knew what we needed to get. And so we got these 2 bottles of, I think it was some shooters. And straight off the bat, it wasn't just sipping drinks or drinking slowly. I was drunk. And I remember that feeling. It was normal. And that discomfort that I felt my whole life. Because I think that was the feeling that I felt my whole life, the discomfort of not, like, that just not being able to, like, even be in my own skin. And it was gone. And I was social and I was fitting in and I could talk and it was amazing. And I was like, wow, why aren't everybody, like, why aren't more people doing this? And I was like thinking everybody felt that way also, when they drank, like that was the feeling. So yeah, that was my first drink. I didn't drink that much after that. It was occasionally, like once in a while, every few months. And so at that point, my dad was drinking quite heavily. He started drinking quite heavily when my mom was sick. He was kind of checked out for a while. He was drunk like every day. He'd come home drunk. And I felt sorry for him. My sister was really angry with him, and she'd be screaming at him and fighting with him. And I just felt sorry for him because in my head, well, if this makes you feel better, why not, because sometimes he'd be happy and he'd be smiling. So he ended up having a heart attack. And he would attribute it to stress. It probably was a lot of stress, but he was drinking heavily and he was healthy. Otherwise, he ran 3 comrades. He was fit. He didn't smoke. So yeah, he had a heart attack. After that, he continued drinking. And yeah, I can't say whether or not he's an alcoholic because there's other things that happen otherwise afterwards. But anyways, yeah, so that was it. He was kind of like checked out for a while. So I had like almost no parental supervision whatsoever. Nobody really told me I needed to get up to go to school, check reports, or know what's going on in my life, or made me lunches or anything. So I was kind of like on my own. My sister was also kind of on her own. I didn't even know what was going on in her life because we were not close. Yeah, so we were just kind of like doing our own thing, and my brothers were kind of growing up. I don't know how, but everyone just doing whatever they can. And so yeah, so I got through matric doing almost nothing. I didn't study. I've never been able to study. I was lazy and unmotivated, and I always knew I could get through things in life doing almost nothing, and that's how I did it. And yeah, so yeah, the other thing is my parents were very big in sports, so I was in so many different types of sports and activities. So that was like a big part of my life. It was probably bigger than school for me. Like it was way more important to my parents than school. So yeah, after that I went to university. It was just to do it because all my friends were doing it. This is what we're supposed to do. This is the next step in life. Just studied some BA degree just because it looked easy and simple and didn't really know what I wanted to do. So yeah, but I think I went for like a total of 2 lectures. I didn't go for 2 exams completely. Yeah, I didn't do any studying. And so at the end of the year, I had failed half my modules, passed half, I don't know how, but they excluded me at that point. And I was like, oh, well, I'm a failure. But I didn't actually do anything. And in the same year, so at this point, yeah, I was drinking a lot more. I started drinking a lot more in matric, and it was weekends with friends and stuff. And then obviously when I was on campus, it was a lot more than that because now everybody else was drinking around me as well. And so I was, at that point, I was a synchronized swimmer. I did that since I was 13, and I started off really well. And I remember a lot of people telling me I was really naturally talented and I won everything. And that was a big ego boost for me because I didn't put work into that. And I was like, wow, I'm just naturally good. But that bubble was burst really quickly because then I moved up to the national team, and then I could see how average I was because I needed to work, and I actually did put in the work. I worked really hard to be really average in this team because that's what I was. I wasn't the best anymore. And yeah, it was crushing for me. So anyways, we were training for nationals, and so the one day I was drinking and I had training afterwards, but I don't miss training because we get fined. And I was passed out at home. Then I got my costume on, I went, and what happened after that, I don't know because I thought I was okay, but I can't remember it, and I was in blackout for 2 hours in the pool, and everybody's obviously practicing this routine, and I don't know what I was doing. I was a disruption to everybody, and they had told me to get out of the pool apparently, and I wasn't doing it, and I was laughing, and so yeah, what happened after that was I got kicked off the team. They pulled me out of the team and told me I will only be on the team as a reserve. I will not be in the team. And in my head, it was like, well, you people didn't like me anyways, and you all didn't want me on this team, and you all didn't think I'm good enough. And it was a whole lot of that. But the reality was, nobody did that. And then people started talking about me being on drugs, and my coach came and asked me, and I said, how ridiculous. I was so insulted, and I said, why would I even be on drugs? We get randomly drug tested. That's so stupid. But I mean, I missed the whole point that I looked so out of it. And I was drunk. I was in blackout drunk. And so anyways, I was still going to nationals because I was doing a solo. So I was told, I'd still be going to nationals because at that point they were doing selections for Commonwealth Games. And so they had already done selections for two girls. And my coach said, well, there's two people that they're going to either take one of you, it's going to be you or someone else. And I was in a panic because I was like, well, that's embarrassing and humiliating because I'm not ready for this. And it's just going to be an embarrassment. And so anyways, I ended up at nationals. And I competed very, very poorly. I basically went out of my way to do a terrible, terrible job. And if anyone could see that I wasn't interested before, it was clearly obvious then. And I think I was just almost dead last. Yeah. And I left straight after that. So yeah, all of that happened in a year. I was kind of like, at the end of that year, it was like, well, I'm such a failure. But I never ever looked at how I had sabotaged every opportunity in my life. And so after that, I started working for my dad. He said, well, come work for me if you don't know what you're going to do. And I was like, cool, at least, I can just be doing something now so people can kind of get off my back. So I did that. I ended up working for my dad for a very long time. But yeah, so in between all of that, it's a long process of me drinking on the weekends. So my drinking was just weekend drinking. I didn't drink during the week, but it was binge drinking. But kind of almost just functioning to a point because everything was the same. I was working during the week. I was drinking out with my friends on the weekends. I was also in a relationship at that point, my first relationship, long-term relationship, and my only one. So, and as it turns out, we're both alcoholics. We were drinking a lot during the weekends. So a whole lot of years passed where it was the same thing all over, over and over again. So I think it was 2017 or 2016. Oh, sorry, I'm missing something, yeah. So we moved. What had happened was my dad was drinking heavily at that point, and he had lost one of his businesses. The second one, he'd lost his business contracts because he wasn't servicing clients. Then he lost our house. And then he decided that he's moving to the South Coast because, and his words were, I'm going to die if I live in Durban. And so we moved up here, and his girlfriend lived here, so that's how we ended up on this side. And he stopped drinking for a very long time. That's why I can't say whether he was or was not an alcoholic because he had managed to get his life back together. He managed to build everything back slowly. Didn't have a program to do that, so I don't know, so anyways, we were living here, and then in 2017, Ian and I moved in together in Pennington, and it seemed like a really good idea, but it was probably the beginning of the end for both of us. But yeah, that's when my drinking started happening every day. And it would be like just maybe 3 or 4 days in the week. Then it progressed to, slowly every day. And I wasn't drinking heavily every day, but I was drinking every day. And it progressed so slowly to more heavy drinking. But yeah, so that happened for quite a period of time. Then in 2019, Ian ended up in treatment. And at that point, I was like relieved. I was like, thank God I can kind of just drink in peace now for a little while. So, yeah, so, and the strange part about it was when he was in treatment, that's when my heaviest drinking started. And it was a very lonely place to be in because I was getting worse and he was getting better. And yeah, I was drinking very heavily then every single day. Blackout drinking. Blackouts are so normal to me at that point, and passing out as well. And it was almost like to the point of wanting to black out, wanting to pass out. I just didn't want to be present anymore in my life. Like, I was not suicidal. I was never suicidal. Didn't want to die, but I didn't really care to live either. So yeah, so that was it, blackout drinking. And so I thought, okay, when he gets out of treatment, like, I can quit then. He's not going to be drinking. I'd be able to quit then. But there was something in the back of my head that already knew that I wasn't going to be able to do it. I knew at that point that I was an alcoholic. I knew it a while ago. But I was just kind of like, let me see, if I can do this. And I couldn't. My drinking got progressively worse. And towards the end, it was just a lot of hiding. And it was, at that point, it was drinking on my own. It had been drinking on my own for a good 2 or 3 years. And I didn't want to drink around people. I didn't want to drink with people. I wanted to be alone. I preferred it that way. And I was also very good at keeping up appearances. So people really saw what I wanted them to see of me, and that was it. And as long as it looked good on the outside, everything was good, but it wasn't. That was a lie. And so, yeah, towards the end, yeah, it got a lot progressively worse. And it got to a point where I was like, I knew I needed help, but I was, there was also this point of, I knew I needed help, knew I needed to stop, but I didn't know if it was even possible at that point. I didn't think I could because I'd become so reliant on alcohol. It was, I needed it just to even get through the day, just to function, just to be alive. Yeah, it was so uncomfortable because even going outside and seeing people, I'd become so isolated. I didn't even want to see people. I didn't want to talk to anyone. And I looked at myself the one day in the mirror, and I was like, I looked so thin, and I looked terrible, and it wasn't looking good on the outside, and people could see it, and that's why I isolated more, because people would comment on my weight and what I looked like, and I could see people like, kind of like looking at me like they knew something was wrong. So yeah, I had been more isolated at that point, and I think it was kind of, for me, in a good way, because it was COVID, so we didn't really see many people anyways. So yeah. So anyways, right at the end of it, yeah, it was just hiding alcohol in water bottles. So I just have like alcohol hidden all over the place, vodka in water bottles, and it was so unmanageable that I'd wake up like drunk, and then I'd forget where I hid one, or I'd find one randomly somewhere else, and so yeah, it was all, even that was just totally unmanageable. And yeah, probably towards the very, very end, and in some ways, I kind of knew it was coming to an end. I knew I had to stop. I knew that I couldn't do this for very much longer. And then probably the last like binge was I was in blackout for 2 days. I did not remember those 2 days. I have 3 flashbacks of those 2 days. I do not remember it. I was with my sister. I remember one flashback of being on the beach, once being at my stepsister's house, and I was working once with my dad in front of me, and I was talking to him. And I was sitting there with my mug of vodka. And those are the 3 flashbacks I have, but nothing else, no memory of anything else. And I don't remember eating. And I was scared at that point, and I knew that that was what it was going to be for me, just that constant state, because it was what I needed to be in at that point. I needed to be in blackout. Can't explain it, but I needed to be in blackout. I couldn't be any other way. And yeah, so it was just after that that I reached out to somebody, and yeah, that was amazing because immediately there was like this relief when I actually admitted that I have a problem. I felt relief, and I also felt scared because I knew in my head this isn't going to work for me. I really don't see how. I don't think it will. But I was told to go for a meeting. So I went for my first meeting, and I had drank that morning because I was nervous, because I couldn't get to a meeting nervous, so that helped with my nerves. So yeah, I got to a meeting, but I just sat there. I didn't introduce myself as an alcoholic or an addict for the first few meetings. I just kind of sat there. I didn't want to be judged, so I was like, I don't want these people to think I'm an alcoholic. I don't want the alcoholics to think I'm an alcoholic. It was, yeah. So anyways, but at that point, I was willing to do anything because I had reached the point of I can't do that anymore. And I didn't lose relationships or anything financial, but I just lost myself. And it was enough for me. I kind of like, I had enough of myself, and that was it for me. And so yeah, at that point I was willing to do anything. So I was told to do the 90 meetings in 90 days. I did that. And the amazing thing was I met so many people at these meetings, and everybody was warm and welcoming. And there was immediate identification because it was the first time I felt like I actually belonged anywhere, because it was people that were like me and they had similar stories to me. They felt the same feelings I felt. And yeah, it was really amazing because I kept going for meetings and I was sober. And the strange thing is I couldn't explain how or why, but I knew that I went for these meetings and I was sober. And the first few months, I remember people were always talking about being happy and, everything was great. And I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that for a good few months. What I felt was extreme discomfort. I had the desire to drink. It was gone very quickly. And even that compulsion, it was gone really quickly. But it was replaced with this discomfort. So I lived with that discomfort because I didn't really understand this program, but I was just coming for these meetings and I kept coming back. And yeah, so that was the first few months of recovery for me. It was kind of like me going for meetings, not really knowing what people were talking about. And then I'd hear them say something and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to go and study this now, because that's how I'm going to recover. I need to learn all these things because if I learn all these things, then, I'd get what these people have. Didn't understand that it was an action program. So yeah, probably like 6 months into recovery, I kind of started to understand the surrender because it took me a while to get there. The admitting was easy for me. Step one was not difficult for me. I knew I was an alcoholic. I didn't have any doubts in my mind about that. I knew it a while ago. So I got the surrender, and I kind of got to that point where I could see what people were talking about, that peace and that happiness. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And nothing had changed around me. It was nothing physically or, externally changed around me. It was just me. And so, yeah, at the end of June, I was at a meeting on a Friday, and I remember we were taking some people home, and I got in the car and I had like 10 missed calls on my phone from my sister. And then I checked my WhatsApp, and there's these messages with her babbling. Wasn't even words. I don't know what she was saying. So I called her back, and she was screaming at me on the phone, and she says, Daddy's collapsed. You need to get to the hospital now. Where the fuck are you? I'm trying to phone you. And I was like, I was more upset with her, the way she was talking to me. And I was like, I was in a meeting. And so, anyways, while I'm on the way, the thought that ran through my head was he's had a heart attack, and he wouldn't survive another heart attack. And so I remember I got to the hospital, and it was, I saw my brother, and he was crying, and that kind of broke me because he doesn't cry. And he didn't know at that point, so I walked into the hospital, and I got into the room. They took me to this room, and my sister and my stepmother were there, and they were crying. And I knew already, but I asked the question anyways. And yeah, so then they told me at that point that my dad had passed away. And so my youngest brother was outside, and he didn't know. He had been with my dad when he collapsed. They were at the tennis court, and they were playing tennis, and they just got off the tennis court, and my dad collapsed. So he didn't know. So I went outside, and so I had to go and tell him. And yeah, he was like really broken at that point. And so my immediate thought was about my brothers and how unfair it was for them. And I remember I phoned my sponsor then straight afterwards, and so yeah, I phoned my sponsor, and I remember at that point, I don't know, I can't remember what I said on the phone, but afterwards my thought was, I can never drink again, because I would never be able to be here for my family if I do. And so yeah, so this program helped me to get through that in a very different way, in a better way than I had been able to process my mother's death, where I could actually be there for my family, and I could do things the right way, and I didn't need alcohol to do this. And so much has changed since then, because I have such a close relationship with my stepmother. We never ever spoke. If we said hello to each other, that was it. And I always thought it was her. But I also didn't realize I just disconnected myself. And I kind of distanced myself from people also, because I was always just emotionally unavailable to anyone. So we talk like all the time, and we say I love you on the phone, and I can't believe that's actually happened, because we've never spoken, and we have a good relationship now, and she trusts me with things relating to my dad's death and his estate and stuff. So it's like Yeah, it's amazing. My sister is living down here. Um, we could never get along, and we hadn't been living near each other in 17 years. And she moved here, 1 kilometer away from me, 6 months ago. And I thought that would be terrible, but it turns out it's not. We actually getting along right now. It's only because I could actually learn how to put up boundaries and learn how to have a good relationship with someone. I've never been able to do that. Yeah, so there's so much that has changed from then to now. And just quickly, like, I didn't understand the purpose of service. I didn't understand how it would help my recovery. But it was only when I started doing it that I realized that it was getting me out of myself. And it was amazing because not only was it getting me out of myself, I was able to help somebody else. And I didn't think I was capable of helping anyone else in this program because I thought I knew nothing. And everybody knew so much more than me. And it doesn't have to be big things. It can be the smallest of things, like even listening to somebody or finding out how they're doing. I thought service had to be this big thing. It doesn't have to be. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm really grateful to be sober today. I'm actually looking at it now because I forget where I was, and yeah, I can't believe I'm actually sitting here today and doing this. I couldn't speak in front of people. Yeah, so I'm blank now. Yeah, thanks for letting me share. Just gonna...